voices were. If you say got it, if you click on got it, you get to stay. I'm glad about that. Everybody, it's really good to see you, and keep my minimum, because at any given moment my voice may disappear, and I want you to have all the time to hear from and to converse with Arianne Lehn, who is a Peace USA pastor, a friend of mine of some long standing. She was a student at McCormick when I was serving in the Western suburbs. And so I've been enjoying following her vocational path for quite some time now. That was her husband, Jeff, abducting their son, Noah. And it was nice to see the top of his head for a little bit. Welcome, Jeff. Give him our best.
Thank you.
And Arianne, for some years, lived and served in Fort Wayne. And so they have, an asterisk by their name as Hoosiers once upon a time.
Yes.
Now they're in Wilmette, Illinois, where Jeff serves as pastor of the Wilmette Presbyterian Church.
Right.
And Arianne's ministry is as a writer and a poet and a beautiful crafter of prayers. She has a really great email that comes out regularly called Monday Manna. And it's filled with beautiful thoughts and reflections. I love her taste in reading. Therefore, I think she's astute and brilliant. And she weaves things together around a theme each week that is transparent and authentic and beautiful and deeply theological. And one of the great things about that ministry is that she's published a book called Ash and Starlight, which is a Chalice Press book from a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, it was fall of 2019. So
okay.
Right before COVID, right.
PC. And it has been a sustained presence in my life. Your writing has meant a lot, and the book and your Monday Manna. So I hope that at some point you'll share a way for folks to connect with you through that email blast.
Yes.
If you'd like, maybe put it in the chat, perhaps.
That's perfect. I will do that.
It was one of the Monday Mannas that prompted me to give Arianne a ring and find out if she would be available to talk with us. She did a beautiful, beautiful job of addressing the subject of forgiveness. And it seemed like a good Lenten topic, and it seemed like something that we can all connect with on some level or other. And so we're very pleased that you were free and willing to come and be with us for what will certainly be manna. And I'm thinking you may know some of the folks on this call.
Yeah, I'm seeing some familiar names. I mean, even as it's been so many years since I've been in Indiana, and I was just with a few Wabash pastors earlier this week for the coaching summit that the Synod of Lincoln Trails hosted. So it was a great gathering there with some pastors from Wabash as well. So wonderful. Yeah. What a gracious introduction, Jennifer. I feel so humbled and encouraged by those words, and just echo so much of that back to you. Your warm and beautiful spirit has been such a blessing to me for many years. So thank you. Thank you. I have such gratitude for that. I would love if we could just to, if people wouldn't mind just quickly introducing themselves. I'd just love to know who we have in this great circle for this little time together today, if you wouldn't mind.
Maybe,
Oh, sorry.
My name's David Crowley. I'm was a longtime pastor, but I'm now the chaplain at Peabody Retirement Community in North Manchester. So about 30 miles west of your stomping grounds in Fort Wayne from years ago. And I'm here. Anyone Jennifer lifts up as having great taste in reading, I'm going to pay attention to. But I think that we say forgiveness in church all the time, and we don't give enough help on how to do it. So I'm delighted to be able to hear you. Thanks. And I love seeing your child.
Oh, you're so gracious. He was actually pretty content to stay still for a few moments. So that's probably the most he'll sit today. Thank you, David.
Good morning. I'm Karen Wellington. I'm from Goshen First Presbyterian Church, and I'm a ruling elder there. So welcome this morning.
Oh, nice to meet you, Karen. Thank you.
I'm Alan Griffin. I chair the Commission on Ministry here in Wabash Valley. Just finished up as a bridge pastor in Lebanon, Indiana. And my real claim to fame is that I'm Kelly Trace's dad.
Oh, we have a father-daughter duo. Oh, awesome.
Kelly, that's your turn.
Popcorn Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly Trace. I was ordained in the Presbytery of Wabash Valley, and actually I'm a Presbytery of the Twin Cities member, but my dad invited me because my friend Laura Burge introduced me to your book. For seminary class, I was seminary classmates with Laura, so I'm a huge fan, trying not to fangirl right now.
Wait, so were you at McCormick too?
Yeah, so I started at McCormick in 2011.
Oh, so we just were passing, because Laura's a sweet friend. Yeah, so I graduated in 2011. Okay. Oh, that's so wonderful. Yay. Oh, well, wonderful. That I love that sweet connection. Please give Laura my love when you talk to her next.
I'm going to see her tomorrow, so I'll let her know.
Oh, fantastic. Is she still in Rochester?
She is, yeah. That's where we both are. So.
Oh, you're in Rochester as well. Okay, yep. Terrific. Good.
Welcome, Kelly. We're delighted you're with us.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Donna Enerson. I'm a 20-year commissioned ruling elder at a little church out in the cornfields. And I'm just yearning for your topic and for your voice, and to hear the poetry that I've read of yours come alive as you read it and talk about it. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Donna. Wonderful to meet you. Thank you.
My name is Gladys. My last name is Waba, from Memorial Presbyterian Church, Dayton, Indiana. I came from Texas, been in Texas for 25 years. So I'm new in the area, but I'm getting there.
Well, welcome. Thank you, Gladys. Just have a couple more folks.
Mike Shuren, I'm a retired judge and a CRE, so I sort of right circuit with both hats on, fill in at courts and fill in at churches.
Very good. Thank you, Michael.
My name is Ron Phillips. I'm a spring graduate of Columbia Theological CRE training. I'm a ruling elder at Valparaiso, Indiana church, Presbyterian church. And I look forward to continue to serve in a manner that is best for my Lord.
Thank you.
And Vicki Dreibelbis, the administrator for the Presbytery of Wabash Valley, and welcome.
Thank you. Well, thank you all so much. It's really a privilege for me to get to be among you today, and so thank you for making time for this, and thank you so much, Jennifer, for the invitation and the very gracious welcome. And I'm going to be, thank you for sharing about Monday Manna as well, because I will be reading from that, which she alluded to earlier. But I'm excited to talk about forgiveness today because like David alluded to, it's this big topic that seems in a lot of ways really basic, and yet it's really hard to do. And it's so central to our faith. And I like to think about forgiveness as a practice, the practice of forgiveness. And I choose that word intentionally because I think it's something that we're continually growing in, and that we never master, of course. And it's something that we do with God's help and with God's Spirit within us. And I also think of forgiveness in terms of a cycle. Sometimes we can be pretty linear in our thinking of forgiveness, where, well, I've forgiven that person and I've moved on. And I haven't found that to be resonant in my own experience. It seems to really be more cyclical. And I think about how cycles are so inherent to nature. I mean, of course, the earth, the natural world lives in cycles, and the church and the church calendar, of which we're a part, is a cycle, and even our own personal lives. And of course, right now, being in this season of Lent, we can look at how Lent and Easter are grounded in forgiving love. I mean, how forgiveness is what God's love is. And I think it was Richard Rohr who talked about how all spirituality basically boils down to forgiveness. That's really what the heart of our faith is. And of course, we see this modeled in Jesus, and how his transforming love and forgiveness overcomes pain, overcomes evil, and even death. And how during Lent, this is a time for us to focus on how we have his Spirit within us. And we, with his help, can live into greater freedom, which I think is what God's desire is through forgiveness, is this tie to freedom. And so in our time together today, I'm going to share a few thoughts myself. And what I'm really looking forward to, though, is conversation together. And I think, we learn and practice best with one another, because that's really where our faith meets the ground, is in relationship with each other. So to begin, I'd like to do just a very simple grounding practice. I think that forgiveness can be, it can be this big topic where we kind of float above the ground in this nebulous way. And I think it's important to come at forgiveness, this really important spiritual discipline, from our real lives. So I invite you to just close your eyes for a moment. And if you're eating, just keep munching, do your thing. But I invite you to close your eyes and take a couple of deep breaths. And I invite you to bring to mind someone that you would like to forgive. Someone whom forgiving them, would create more space in your mind and in your heart. And if someone is not coming to mind for you right now, maybe think back. Think of a time and a person in the past in which God led you on a path of forgiveness with that person. But I want you to think of a specific person and a specific relationship, to to ground you in this conversation that we have about what forgiveness is. When you have your person and your situation, you can open your eyes. Okay, that's going to be our touchstone. So as we're talking about forgiveness, as we're thinking about what forgiveness is, I want you to hold this very practical situation, relationship, person before you as a way to keep you grounded in this conversation of what forgiveness really means in your own heart and in your own life at this point in time. So as Jennifer very generously alluded to, I have a somewhat erratic newsletter, Monday Manna, which I try and send out as many Mondays as I can. But last month I did reflect about forgiveness. And if you'll allow me, I'd like to read for you what I wrote here. And then we're going to enter into some other thoughts and some questions that I'd like to pose for our group. So I wrote about feeling and making breathing room for what's really in our hearts. And what I didn't expect was that I discovered some surprises in my own heart, particularly with regards to grudges and unforgiveness. It was in talking with my husband recently that this all came bubbling to the surface. I thought I had forgiven. I thought I'd healed. In my linear thinking, I thought this was behind me. But a fresh situation arose, which triggered something in me. My reaction made quite clear I had not forgiven. In other words, there was some abundant freedom I was not claiming, some things I was clutching rather than casting into God's heart for handling. I deeply resonated with what Rob Bell recently said about forgiveness in his podcast, quote, and then finding out that it's you. He described how you think you are freeing the other person when you forgive. But in doing so, you find out the person freed is you. Anne Lamott says something similar in her popular refrain that withholding forgiveness is drinking rat poison, then waiting for the rat to die. It is not about the other person or what they did, though truth and honesty about that must be named for authentic forgiveness to happen. Forgiveness is about you and God and freedom. In that conversation with my husband, I recognized how I'd been giving away free rent space to the precious real estate in my head and heart, that I was letting the tyranny of bitterness silently stay in power, even at a subconscious level, that I was still holding out to be understood and vindicated. The clincher for me with Rob Bell's podcast was his metric for how you know you have forgiven, or at least made some progress. You know you're free when you can genuinely wish goodness for the person who hurt you. I am not there yet. I am trying. One thing helping me is using the loving kindness meditation. You move through a series of people as you pray, recite, speak these words. You also don't start with the person you really don't like. You warm up by blessing someone you love with these words. Then someone who is neutral to you, like the nice front desk person at the library. And then the person you're grimacing toward. And of course, you pray these over yourself. So here are the 4 phrases. May they be happy. May they be healthy. May they be safe. May they be at peace. May they be happy. May they be healthy. May they be safe. May they be at peace. Over and over again, letting the words root down ever so slowly, eventually finding a home, at last becoming real, meant, genuine. It's some of the hardest and holiest work we can do. So that was what I wrote for Monday Manna. And I'd like now to enter into some conversation together about forgiveness. And I think, in addition to, if there's anything that stood out to you just now, I'd like to hear your thoughts about that. But also, I think a good place for us to start is defining maybe what does forgiveness mean to you? How would you define forgiveness? And maybe too, tied on to that, how has your understanding of forgiveness changed throughout your life? I think there are so many different definitions and understandings of forgiveness. We can think of it as a release, as an acceptance, as a giver of freedom. I recently learned that in the Greek, which I remember very little from seminary about my Greek, but in Greek, the two roots put together literally mean to send away. To forgive is to send away. So would anyone be willing to share how you would define forgiveness, and if your understanding of forgiveness now has changed from earlier periods of your life? Would anyone be willing to share? Yeah, Karen.
I'm going to go first so I don't lose my nerve. I recently, well, I have a 19-year-old daughter in college, and she recently made a choice that was very upsetting to me, and I had to forgive her. So I wanted to go first so I didn't lose it. But forgiveness meant letting go. I couldn't look at her for a period of time because I was so upset. And what she did wasn't awful. It was just, I wasn't in the right place to accept it. And I prayed about it, and I talked to my husband, and I was able to forgive her. Of course, she's my daughter, but it was truly, my dog's upset because I'm upset. It was truly an exercise in letting go. And that's what I think of when I think of forgiveness. I let go of those awful feelings that I had and the hard time that I had even looking at her. So your topic today, which I had forgotten what it was about, and as soon as you said the word forgiveness, it was so poignant to me because I just experienced that last week. So wow. Thank you. Sorry, I'm okay. I'm over it. I'm okay. It's still pretty fresh. Wow. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your courage and your vulnerability and sharing, Karen. It is a blessing for all of us to hold space for you. Thank you so much. That is profound. That is the foundation of what we're talking about. Oh, do you find?
Well, those of you who've been around me know I'm a pretty emotional person anyway, but it was just an extra special topic because it's just so relevant lately. Yes. And as any of you who have children know, they don't always make the choices you want them to, which is frustrating.
I think the definition of parenting, not only forgiveness, is letting go.
Yes, that's exactly right. So thank you for letting me share.
Welcome. There's always someone crying in my house, either a child or Jeff, my husband, or me. Wow, Karen, if you wouldn't mind me asking, do you find yourself, and I know that this is all very fresh, engaging in kind of a fresh form of forgiveness each day? Like, do you find yourself that this is an ongoing kind of daily choice to let go?
Yes, I think that's true, because the first morning after I pretended. I said good morning, friendly when she came down for breakfast, and I was gracious, but in my heart, I knew I wasn't over it. And then I talked to my sister, who was very comforting to me as well. And she said, allow yourself some time to grieve and then to consider next steps. And that was really helpful for me because it let me still have my feelings and feel like that was okay, still knowing that I was going to choose forgiveness and move on, but I still wanted to allow myself to feel upset and angry. I thought that I deserved that. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but that's how I felt. And then as each day passed, I got another chance to talk to my daughter and kind of express even more rationally how I felt. But I would say that yes, every day it was a renewed choice. And then it wasn't a choice anymore. Then it was just there. I felt it, and then I was okay, and I felt a lot better. So that was my experience.
That's beautiful. And I think it's really a powerful illustration too, Karen, of how, you know, we talk a lot about moving on, and I don't know that we do move on. I think we move forward, you know, like I think we can put pressure on ourselves to leave something behind us, but I think it's okay that I think about, you know, from Genesis, the Jacob wrestling, how he comes out of the wrestling with the limp, but he moves forward, but he's changed by that experience that he had. And I think we do the same with God's help, that we move forward, even as we may have new aches, we may have new pains. So that's really powerful. Thank you, Karen. Would anyone else like to share how you understand forgiveness? Yeah, Donna.
I was thinking about how as my years go on and I get older and I realize that some of what I was doing to myself was catastrophizing and building up something bigger than it ever needed to be. So I would feel a hurt, and because I didn't deal with it in the near future, pretty soon it was not just a hurt. I was in traction, or I had to have surgery on it or something. You know, it had become so big that I didn't think I could ever get over it. And I think I've learned, at least for my personality and for the way I view life, is that I need to handle things as they come along, and get them out and take whatever problems are mine and accept them and own them, and allow the other person to do the same, and just deal with it more efficiently. That's not the right word, because it's very emotional, but it hasn't had a chance to just develop into something that grabs other people and other stuff, you know, like a big wad of something that's sticky.
It's a good image.
Yeah. So I think I have learned that what I know about forgiveness is that I will not find peace until that has happened, until I have had an opportunity to do something and own what's mine, give what's not mine to the other person, and let it and handle it. I don't, even that's not the right word, because handle means that sort of like manhandling it, manipulating it, making something happen. No, dealing with the other person at the same emotional and loving level.
No, you articulated yourself really, really well, Donna. So many good threads in what you just said about forgiveness being a form of peace, and forgiveness also involving our claiming of what is our agency in this situation, what is our role, which so much about forgiveness comes down to us recognizing what's in our power to do, because we cannot control the other person. And I also appreciate how you brought up we especially see this in, in long-standing conflicts, be it between two people or two countries, that the longer it goes on, the more distant that original offense becomes, to the point where, younger generations don't even know how this conflict began.
The Hatfields and the McCoys kind of thing. I want to say just one other thing, and then I'll be done. I had to realize that sometimes the forgiveness that I gave would be misused. It would be thrown away by the other person. It would be tromped on. It would be shrugged and not mean anything. But I had to understand that that was not the point of it. The point of it was letting me let it go, do what's mine, let the rest of it go. And it's out there in the universe. And what I have had happen twice now in my experience is that later, years later, in one case, that person picked up what I had said all those years before. And there was restitution in a way of the situation.
Wow.
So don't be afraid to do it for fear that it won't be accepted. Do it because it's the way you have to go to live on.
Right, it's freeing you. That's beautiful. Thank you, Donna. Right, because the other person may never say they're sorry. But that's not what the point is. That's beautiful. Thank you, Donna. Would anyone else like to share?
I want to say just a few things about forgiveness. If we don't forgive, we will not be forgiven. When I learned later, after I became a Christian, I learned later that if you don't love, you do not know God, no matter how spiritual you think you are. If you really don't love, you do not know God, for God is love. And that's where forgiveness started making sense to me. I had some issues growing up. I was just treated so badly and all that stuff. But when I learned that if you really do not love, don't even say that you're a Christian. So I decided to just let go of all my childhood treatments and all that stuff. And so sometimes what I do is I will sit down and then think, what is it that someone would do to me that I'll not let go? Just recently, I also sat down and I said, one of my kids that looked so much like my husband does exactly. My husband was so loving. This child is just so loving. And I said, the thing that will hurt me most right now is somebody killing this son of mine. And so I thought about it and I said, God, even if it happens, I'm trusting that it won't happen, but even if it happens, right now, God, I am promising you that I will forgive that person.
Wow.
So, God just helped me and gave me the grace to forgive. And sometimes I'll sit down and think about all people around. Is there anybody that I'm still holding grudges against? I don't think there's anyone under the sun right now. My fear is, what if somebody hurts this, my son, that is like a husband to me? But I have made up my mind, even if it happens, Lord, give me the grace to forgive and to test my forgiveness if you're able. I mean, people do stuff to me, which is natural. And especially because I'm different, people do all kinds of little stuff. But God helps me to forgive. And then the test, how I test it is when I see that person and I look at that person eyeball to eyeball, and I have joy and peace in my heart. So every time I test this and it works, And I'll see myself smiling and every time by God's grace, I'll go back and I say, yes, Lord, thank you. So it's all by practice, just like Donna said, just the boldness. One person I went over to and I said, the person did something wrong to me. And I went over and I said, I am so sorry that that you felt the way you felt. The person started repeating what I said and say, I am so sorry that just making fun of me. And I said, I had the boldness to continue, and I said, I am really sorry. And she said, I am really sorry, just doing all kinds of stuff. But do you know that I left that place joyful in my heart? Why? Because the Bible says, as much as it depends on you. So you do yours. It doesn't matter how the other person responds. Just do it and let it go. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Gladys. That's a testimony. Thank you so much. And I love
You're welcome.
your prayer of give me the grace to forgive. I think about how those two words, grace and forgiveness, often go together, and how the whole point of grace is that we don't deserve it, and how that true freedom comes from continually giving and receiving what we don't deserve, in God's economy of grace. That's what God's economy is. It's all grace. So thank you, Gladys. Wow. Yes.
I agree with her. Love, the people that we forgive is almost it's beyond description. It's just like we're affording them the same thing that God has afforded us, and that's forgiveness. And when we look at them, we're to love each other as, ourselves, and love them. They are our neighbors. And God loves us so much. It's just that we have the same responsibility to be about our Father's business, and that is to forgive. And that's looking at other individuals through God's eyes and knowing that none of us are perfect. And when people make mistakes, they're just that. But to go further, when people continue their animosity or whatever, it's still to love them is to pray for them and pray for yourself and get beyond that. You're talking about going forward or going on. It's our responsibility more than anything in the world to just forgive them, and not only just forgive them, but to love them. Like God loves us. He loved us while we were yet dead in our sins. So love is what it's all about. And that's a criteria that's the litmus test, if you will, for all of us, is how we love one another and how we deal with one another with smiles and laughter and a true blooming love that you have for God's people. So forgiveness is I found it easier to forgive other people than sometimes, and this is my dilemma, than to forgive myself sometimes. It's just like one of those, the old saying that every Christian's heard 1,000 times, go over there and leave it at the cross and for myself, I don't want to, I pick it back up, It's like, you know what, I kind of need that, it's like, beat myself with it, type of thing. But I can, one day I just realized when I walked into the sanctuary and some of the people I didn't know, but it didn't matter. I loved them. That's because the Holy Spirit just done something to my heart. You know, like Ezekiel says, he's taken the heart of stone and made one of flesh. And that's what he did. So forgiving people is okay. And I find it easy. I find it hard to forgive myself when I feel I've failed other people. And essentially I failed God. That's my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. Yeah. I share in that. It's hard to forgive myself. Why do we hold ourselves to different standards?
Don't know.
Anyone else want to share? You know, I was thinking, Ron used language of this, and Karen did as well, you know, of setting something down or letting something go. And it reminded me of one of the resources I wanted to share with all of you is one of the best books that I've read on forgiveness. I read it some years ago, but it's called The Book of Forgiving. And I will, when I do links in the chat later, I can include a link to this book, but it's called The Book of Forgiving. And it was co-written by Desmond Tutu and his daughter, Mpo. And it's a very unique book on forgiveness because they really try and create kind of a more concretized path toward forgiveness. And they have specific rituals and practices within the book that you can use. And one of them is, and this is what I was reminded of as you were talking, Ron, is this exercise where you find a rock or a stone, not like something really big, but a stone or rock to hold in your non-dominant hand. And they say you need to try and hold it for 6 hours, like to keep this rock or stone in your hand. And then just to experience what is it like to be continually holding that. Of course, you can't do anything with that hand when you're holding the rock, but as a very embodied way to experience how holding on to that rock can parallel the experience of holding on to a grudge. And so in this book, they talk about the path to forgiveness as having 4 parts to the path. And I want to tell you what they are. So the first part is telling the story. The second is naming the hurt. I'll go through these again. The third is granting forgiveness. And the fourth is renewing or releasing the relationship. So the first part of telling the story, you look at the work that Desmond Tutu did with the Truth and Reconciliation Committee in apartheid Africa, South Africa, how the very first step for forgiveness to happen is narrating, this is what happened from your perspective. This is what happened to me. And then how that has to be named first. And then the second part is naming the hurt. So you're narrating what happened, you're telling the story of what happened, but then you need to name, I was hurt by this. It's really laying a foundation of honesty, that we need to tell the truth about the experience, that needs to come first before we're able to move on toward forgiveness. So then the third step is the granting of forgiveness. And that's doing the work that you all have so beautifully named. That's the release, that's the acceptance, that's the letting go. And then the fourth step that the tutus name is renewing or releasing the relationship. And I really appreciate how they clearly name that forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation. And I would say, you know, reconciliation is different than love too, like Ron was alluding to, that we're called to love everyone. That is absolutely true. But we can love people without being in a relationship with them in the way that we were before. And I appreciate too that when we think about renew or release the relationship, there's not restore. You know, I think about how restoration can often suggest something going back to exactly what it was before. And I don't think we do that when we're in a relationship and we're forgiving. The relationship is going to be changed. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be beautiful and good and even healthier than it was before, but it's going to be different. And so what the tutus talk about at the end of this forgiveness book is how we have a choice and we seek God's guidance. And is this a relationship that should be that is to be renewed, that is to come into a new season, or it can be just as faithful, and sometimes, depending on the situation, healthier. Is this a relationship to release with love? And so this book, it's not a formula by any means, but I think it does provide some kind of gracious guardrails and some tools to try in your own heart's process of forgiveness. And there was one quote I wanted to pull out for you because I found this to be really powerful. So Desmond Tutu says, I would like to share with you two simple truths. There is nothing that cannot be forgiven, and there is no one undeserving of forgiveness. There is nothing that cannot be forgiven, and there is no one undeserving of forgiveness. It reminds me of that same Rob Bell podcast that I mentioned earlier, because he says, forgive everyone all the time for everything. Forgive everyone all the time for everything. I wonder, how do these statements sit with you? Both the Desmond Tutu one, his belief that there is nothing that cannot be forgiven and there is no one undeserving of forgiveness, and then this phrase from Rob Bell that forgive everyone all the time for everything. What's your just kind of initial reaction to those? Would anyone be willing to?
God forgive me for everything. I did so bad. God decided to forgive me. I didn't deserve to even be a Christian. I don't deserve anything. And then the lives of other believers like David, Saul did everything. I don't think there's anybody that would do to me as much as Saul did to David. And David didn't harm him. David didn't touch him. He had every opportunity to retaliate. Moreover, if I can't do anything about it, I won't fight the person. Is it not better for me to just let go? Just forgive him. And maybe some of them may not intentionally. I know people who intentionally hurt me. And those are the people that I love to deal with. I know you intentionally doing it to see my reaction. What I will do is, by God's grace, like I said, it's all by the grace of God. And when I fail, I will go back to God to forgive me. So, but anyway, if you intentionally hurt me, I will intentionally show you love.
Wow.
And that cripples people all the time around me. So that, I mean, we should forgive because God forgave me and other people were able to forgive. And so he gives the grace. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. So it's all for by grace we are saved, for by grace we forgive. So that's how I mean, there's nothing anybody could do, even killing your best person, that you can forgive. Nothing.
Thank you, Gladys. And that's really a powerful illustration of how forgiveness is disrupting the loop of, so someone does something to you, someone hands you something, and instead of handing it back, which is revenge, you set it down. You know, so true forgiveness is the decision not to hand it back. That's really powerful. Thank you, Gladys. Yeah, Ron.
When you said that, they're powerful statements by Desmond Tutu. Nothing that can't be forgiven, and no one is undeserving. The first thing that I can think of is, when Christ was crucified, he looked up and he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." It was murder. And worse, it was torture. But God, being pure and holy, he looked at this and looked at them and know that they had no clue. They had no idea. Didn't know what they were doing. And he says, "Father, forgive them." And first martyr, when he was being stoned, he used the words of Christ. Again, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Their love for people and their love that God had given them in their heart had changed them in such a way. And God being pure and holy as in Jesus Christ, as he said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Well, God incarnate on the cross asks them to be forgiven. So we have an example.
Yeah.
So Desmond Tutu said it best, or said it fantastically. Nothing can't be forgiven and no one is undeserving. That's everybody.
Yeah. If we really believe that, that changes everything, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm sorry to talk again, but what helps me is what I want to share. If you have anybody, when somebody does something to you and you share it with somebody, and the person says, "What? He did this? Why?" I mean, avoid such people. They're also the people that make me not to forgive. But go to that person. When you talk to that person, the person will be, "Can you think about it this way? Just try the much you can to forgive." All those people that tell you, "Just do it. This is so unfair. Why would they do that?" I avoid them. Yeah, so it's what also helps me. Another thing that helps me is confessing my sins to other people. The Bible says, tell your faults, to each other. When somebody does something and I don't forgive immediately, what helps me is to confess it. I have a prayer partner. I will be like, "Can you believe this person did this and I reacted this way? I'm not supposed to, but I really did. And, I just want to," and then the person will be, "It's okay. Just ask God for forgiveness and move on and forgive the person and go on." Because iron sharpens iron. If you go to other people that won't, help you to come out from your fault or sin or something, it may not help you to forgive.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's such a powerful role that accountability and other people have in order for us to do this spiritual discipline of forgiveness. Yeah, we need each other. We cannot do it alone. Thank you, Gladys. Anyone else? It makes me think too, I think a good question for us in thinking about Gladys sharing how having an accountability partner and practicing confession with someone as a resource that's been helpful for her in forgiving. Are there other resources that have been, or practices, be it things like Gladys did of having an accountability partner, or books, or things that you have found to be helpful for you when it comes to forgiveness, or a place that you go, or anything come to mind that's been something tangible or helpful for you in forgiving? I know for me, I think just movement and getting outside, be it walking or running. I think moving my body is something that helps me with forgiveness. I think about too how, with unforgiveness, we often focus on the mind loops, the rumination, right? That unforgiveness takes up a lot of space in our brains, and in our like I talked about, the real estate in our heads, and of course in our hearts. But I also think our bodies carry it too. And we can spend so much time in our heads that we can get pretty dissociated from what's happening in our bodies. And that's another invitation I would make to you as you think about what forgiveness feels like for you. How do you experience forgiveness in your body? Where do you carry some of when you think about that person that that you want to forgive? Where do you feel that in your body? Where do you feel, maybe you feel tension in your shoulders, maybe you feel it in your tummy, how does your body help you in the practice of forgiving too? Because sometimes just breathing and trying to do some release work and relaxation with our bodies can even lead the way sometimes, I think. I am noticing that we are already close to noon, and I do have a prayer that I'd like to close us with. But before we do, is there anything more that needs to be spoken today from you in this time and in this space about forgiveness? Well, I am so grateful to have had this time with you, and in closing today, I'm going to read a prayer from my book, Ash and Starlight. All the prayers in my book, most of them anyway, begin with the word when. So when ... And this prayer is called When I Don't Want to Love Someone. And this came from a very, all of these prayers come from my own heart, but I can still remember writing this prayer, thinking of this situation and this person. And so maybe we can call to mind, think about our grounding at the beginning of our time together, and that person or that situation that you are trying to hand off to Jesus. And so I invite you to hold that person before you in your heart and in your mind's eye. as I close us with prayer, when I don't want to love someone. Lord Jesus, my very life grows from you, the vine from which I stem with hope for fruit that will last. Your love force flows through me, and yet it also moves into neighboring branches. I don't want to acknowledge my connection with some of them, these people who block my sun or suppress my spirit. I struggle, Jesus, to see and love the goodness in another, even as your life current nourishes me with the same sustenance. Maybe my first step is to simply name each day our connection through you. To remember the seed which brought forth me also birthed them. To unfurl my leaves, soak in the sun, the rainfall, and in doing this, open my heart to you and every single other. To keep all veins open for transformative possibilities that come not through my own doing, but by being joined with you, the one who can and does bring redemptive relationship I never thought possible. Today, I will celebrate being a part of the vine and rest in the work you will do. You only ask me to stay connected, abiding in love. Amen.
Arianne, thank you so much for being. I knew this hour would go quickly. That's a surprise. Thanks so much. You said to me that you had this little window of opportunity. Typically, we end the recording and invite folks to kind of linger in the narthex for a few minutes with you.